It's been really cool because I've grown one of the largest neurofeedback practices in the country. And it's really all just been based off of like, when you have passion and grit and resilience, like you can do anything.
Welcome to the Sharing Passion and Purpose podcast, a weekly podcast providing career and creative inspiration to help you build a purpose-filled life. If you're interested in tapping into your creative potential, pursuing a career with passion, and building on your biggest and best resource, yourself, please join me on this path. I'm your host, Nancy Moore, and I want you to know that I'm on this journey with you. So let's get started. Hi, everybody. So let me tell you a little about my guest that I had the opportunity to visit with. Her name is Rachel Lambert, and she is the founder and CEO of Braincode Centers. I had the opportunity to meet Rachel through a friend and was just immediately fascinated by her interest and heart for brain health. And so I knew I had to have her on the podcast so you all could get to know her as well. And she is so insightful and so knowledgeable, and you're going to hear about that in the podcast, but let me tell you just a little bit more about her. Her background is in psychology, and then she has a master's in clinical mental health counseling. And she personally had experience with neurofeedback, and she will tell you it was absolutely life-changing for her. And so she pursued that path of education and learning the technology and all of that. So she has the background and the interest in helping people with their brains and mental health. And so we get into that, unpacking that in the visit. But you will learn more about her and her heart for helping people and Braincode Centers, how it works, who it's for, who it helps, all of that. I also am going to link her social media on my website so you can connect with her, because she provides some resources and information about brain health, and then also how to positively influence daily habits that are going to help you with your mental health in the long run. And so check that out. And now I hope you enjoy my visit with Rachel Lambert. So, Rachel, I am so happy to be talking to you today. And I will tell people that we're actually visiting in your office because I did a brain map, and I got my results today, which was very fascinating. But anyway, I want people to get to know you, and then we're going to talk about the brain mapping and Braincode Centers and all of that. So let's just start out by letting people get to know a little about you.
Yes, so my name is Rachel Lambert, and I am based out of Denver, but I got married and ended up agreeing to come to Tulsa, Oklahoma. So my probably number one passion, honestly, is my business, Braincode Centers. I fell into this field via a personal experience and testimony. Mm-hmm. So when I was growing up, grew up in a loving, great home. Parents were wonderful. I made my parents' life a nice ride as we were growing up. And I ended up getting into just countless amounts of trouble. I was very impulsive and was not living probably the best directed life. And so what some would have maybe called like normal teenage rebellion really started to get pretty out of hand. And I'll never forget one time my parents ended up sitting me down after a pretty intense episode that I got some trouble in. And they said, "Rachel, do you think before you act? Genuinely, do you think before you act?" And I had to sit with that question, and I was like, I don't really, I just kind of do. And this was really the turning point for honestly my whole life. I ended up going and finding out about brain mapping and neurofeedback. And thank God my parents found out about it. And so I went and got this brain map done, kind of like you just did the other week. And my frontal cortex, my frontal lobe, was essentially going 120 miles an hour with no brakes. So as a teenager growing up, like very reckless, very out of control, horrible decision making. And it all made sense, because how are you supposed to be able to figure out how to drive when your car is completely out of control? I ended up doing a whole series of neurofeedback, which is almost, we'll talk a little bit about it, but almost like PT for the brain. And I truly feel like it gave me a second chance at life. Like, I do not know if I would be here if I hadn't have done that program. So it's really what inspired me and has directed probably the last 15 years of my life to go and get my undergrad and then get my graduate degree and go into the field of brain mapping and neurofeedback. And I know you teach, people getting into business. I have no business background, nor did I probably honestly have any reason to have tried to be a business owner, but I did. And it's been really cool because I've grown one of the largest neurofeedback practices in the country. And it's really all just been based off of like, when you have passion and grit and resilience, like you can do anything. So that's a little bit about me and Braincode and why we're here.
Okay, I love that. It's interesting that you're saying you don't have any background in business. What were your degrees in? And then I want to find out about how you decided to become an entrepreneur and open this business.
Yes, so I got my undergrad in psychology and neuroscience, graduate degree, clinical mental health counseling. Then I went and got board certified in neurofeedback, which is the practice that I do. I worked under a bunch of doctors at first and kind of learned everything, soaked everything up from the science side of things. And then really what happened was this one doctor was like, you're getting all these clients, you're kind of doing everything by yourself. Like, she pushed me out of her nest and I had to figure out how to fly. And I don't know, I probably made every business mistake you can possibly make on planet Earth, but I just kept asking for mentorship and getting help and putting myself out there and asking for help again and getting mentorship again. And slowly but surely you just start to learn. So I almost got like self-learned business degree.
See, I love that you put yourself out there, because having a business is not easy. And it's interesting because so many people with other degrees in, other areas, when they embark in business, they think, oh, this is going to be, so foreign. But you do kind of figure out how to move along and how to find your way. And maybe there were more bumps in the road for you because that wasn't necessarily your education, but that wasn't, the plan for you either. So what do you enjoy about being an entrepreneur? And so I want to make sure people know that you own the Braincode centers, and they're located in Dallas and around Colorado, and also a little, would it be a pop-up? A little hidden satellite? A hidden one in Tulsa. So anyway, but what do you enjoy about entrepreneurship?
Gosh, well, it depends what day you ask.
Is it smooth sailing now? Because no,
absolutely not. We're up to, I think, 50 employees. So I think, when you learn about business, like one of the hardest things to do is manage employees. We see about 5,000 patients a month across our clinics. And sometimes you would think that the clinical side of things is messier because you're dealing with, at least in my population, you're dealing with mental health, anxiety, depression, trauma. And so that can bring a lot of complexities. It's actually managing employees because you're trying to be a good leader. You're trying to show up for different personality types. You're trying to help them reach goals. Everybody's wired differently. Some people move and then you got to fill their position and train. The list goes on. And, that's very common for many different, it's not just my field. That's what being a business owner is like. And so there's definitely some days I'm like, oh my gosh, this is over my head and it's hard. But I wouldn't change it for the world. I love getting to do what I do. I love being able to help people get to the root of their mental health issues. That is the heartbeat of Braincode centers, and that will never get old, despite the challenges that I face. And I like being challenged on the business side of things to lead people and to figure out how to do P&Ls and to get coaching and be challenged. Like, social media has been a huge challenge over the past couple of years because I had no clue how to do social media. And I think some people say, oh, social media, whatever, I don't have time for that. But social media is a huge business outlet. And so any small business, large business, like if you're not focusing on social media and challenging yourself to get in that box, you will fall kind of behind the times, in my opinion. So that was a huge embarking this year especially to say, I can't just ignore this because I don't love social media. Like, as a business owner, if I want to grow, I got to learn this. And so I'm still figuring it out, but that's been a fun challenge this year specifically.
Okay, I think you do a good job with it because it's educational and interesting, and your audience gets to see the different things that you are involved in, who you're helping, where you're going, what's going on. Speaking of who you're helping, so let's talk about specifically what we're doing with what you're doing with the Braincode Center. So if you'll just kind of give us an idea of the people that you work with and maybe who it would be a good fit for to look into it.
Yeah, so when you think about how mental health is delivered in society, right, we're a very symptom-based society. So you go to your PCP, you tell them you're not sleeping well, you're stressed, you're anxious, or maybe you go seek out counseling. Now, I'm a licensed therapist. I do believe in the power of traditional talk therapy, and sometimes there's medication intervention that is absolutely necessary. What I love is actually getting to the root of the very organ that creates those symptoms for us, right, which is our brain. So why are we, from a mental health standpoint, not measuring the very organ that creates symptoms? There would be no doctor that would cut your knee open if you're having knee issues before doing an imaging, right? But that's really how we treat the brain. We just kind of throw some ideas there and see what sticks for the most part. So a QEEG, the brain map, which is what you got the opportunity to do, which thank you so much, that was so fun, is we do a baseline brain map where we place a cap over our clients' heads, fill it up with a little bit of gel, and then we take a recording. What we're recording is the electricity that the brain naturally produces. Much like an EKG of a heartbeat, our brain waves can be monitored with sensors. What we then do on the back end is we quantify that information and put it into a report of findings that we then go over with our clientele, which is, again, we got to go over all of your results today, which was so fun to dive into. It's insightful, it's empowering, it's also very grace-giving because it helps people understand, like, okay, this is why I've been brain foggy, this is why I've been emotionally reactive, this is why I can't sit still, this is why I have ADHD or not, right? So we're very much so helping people get to the root of all things mental health: anxiety, depression, trauma, ADHD, focus issues, migraines, sleep, autism spectrum, I mean, you kind of name it. We also, though, work with a lot of peak performers. So it's not just about fixing something, it's also about optimizing your own human potential. You're obviously, we talked a lot about this, like, you're a very high functioning woman, you do so many things. So how do you get your brain so fit that it can keep up with the exact lifestyle that you're running? So I think sometimes when people think mental health, it's all about, oh, something's wrong, but also how can we be proactive so that you can be the best version of yourself now? So that's the baseline. Then the neurofeedback, and I can just give a very quick overview of that. It's almost like PT for the brain. You're repeating a reward over and over and over again to yield a new behavioral outcome. So we utilize hardware, software, we're placing little electrodes on our clients' heads. Then they get rewarded with auditory and visual feedback for regulating their own activity. So you're literally able to regulate brainwave activity if you're able to provide the brain with reward. And so that's really what we do, is reteach the brain how to optimize its own activity. And over the course of time, like learning how to ride a bike, your brain will have a new neural pathway that is favorable for you to experience freedom from the symptoms that you're struggling with.
So it's so fascinating because you mentioned ADHD, the autism spectrum, and as I've been letting people know that I've done this brain mapping, they have asked me specifically about, help in those areas or assistance in those areas. So if you could speak specifically to that area where, you work with people on optimizing or minimizing the brain activity. I'm probably not even saying the right thing, but specifically speak to those helping people with those diagnoses.
Yeah, so ADHD and autism specifically. So neurofeedback is the modality that we utilize to help correct brainwave activity. So it doesn't really matter what symptom you're coming in with, neurofeedback is going to be the same. However, what looks very different on the back end are the protocols. So what brain waves are we training for that person? What's the challenge point we're going to create in our computer system? What location? You and I talked about the locations of these brainwaves, right? So oftentimes it's a location optimization that we need to help the brain reallocate its energy in. So it's not necessarily about the symptom that people are coming in with, but more so like what our beautiful protocols are on the back end that are tailor-made for that specific person. Everybody's protocols are completely different, which I think gives us really great treatment outcomes. There's a lot of neurofeedback therapists too that'll just do a little bit more like cookie cutter protocols, right? Like a quote unquote anxiety protocol or ADHD protocol. We are looking at brain-based, like individual medicine type protocols, which I think gives us kind of the best treatment plan moving forward. But yeah, I mean, we see ADHD, spectrum stuff all of the time, focus issues. Also, there's a lot of people that are diagnosed with ADHD. I just did a map review this morning, and quantitatively, they don't really have ADHD. They might have every single symptom that reflects ADHD, but for a different reason why. So that's very cool to be able to actually look at the brain, because if we can actually treat the brain to help with its distractibility or productivity or brain fog or whatever, versus just give someone a label and then hopefully they can get medication or whatever to help. There's a lot of people, I'd say 8 out of 10 people are misdiagnosed with ADHD. And there's a totally different pattern that we have to address to get them feeling better.
Okay, that's so interesting. Okay, thank you for speaking to that specifically. One thing that I think is fascinating is that you can help people remotely. And I've seen that on your social media. That's how I know that. Because we're just now starting to work together, you and I. But if you could talk about that option for people, because I think that is very helpful for people who are not living in Tulsa, Dallas, or, the Colorado, Denver area.
Yes. So the past 10 years, there would not be a day that came where, let's say you came in and you're a month into your training sessions and you're feeling awesome and you're like, hey, my mom up in Maine wants to do this. Can you help me find a center in Maine? And I was literally spending so much of my time helping other people find centers. I'm doing research in every state. And finally, over the past couple of years, because technology is just ever advancing, they started to come up with hardware, kind of like a wearable. So if people listening have heard of the Whoop or the Oura Ring, or there's all these different like head devices that you can buy now. And there's actually devices out there that you can train your brain remotely from anywhere in the world. So we developed our remote Braincode program. So we have our own app, our own headband and stuff like that. And we have clients literally from everywhere that are finally able to actually experience the life-changing benefits of brain training, but wherever they're at. It's a little different. Obviously, you're not meeting with a person at a clinic, but in today's society, whereas there's some people that the realistic point is they're not going to be able to get to a center. So we have to have some sort of remote option, and our remote program is absolutely fantastic. So yeah, it's exciting.
I like that you created that, because then the people, you're kind of keeping them with you and being able to treat them, and the quality that you provide, and I think it's great. So yeah, I wanted you to specifically speak on that. So one thing that I thought was interesting is you're about the whole person. You're not just about, doing the neurofeedback. And correct me if I say some terminology that's not correct. But so when we talked about my plan, you talked about even me doing a detox. You showed me a vitamin that I wrote down, and I love that kind of thing. I love being able to, as far as, treating the whole person, I love that you take all of that into consideration. And I'm just curious from your perspective why that's so beneficial.
Yes, I mean, we are absolutely the experts in someone's neuropotential and neurochemistry, right? However, we also see people, right? Let's say you walk in and you're carrying a Diet Coke and a bag of Cheetos, and you never drink water. I can only help your brain so much combating what you're ingesting into your system. So we very much so take a holistic approach when it comes to educating people about supplementation and nutrition and exercise and all of the things that you need to do as a lifestyle and habitude change outside of what we're doing in the brain training clinic. However, the caveat to that is there are a lot of people that are doing all of that stuff to their full capacity. They're taking the supplements. They are getting exercise. They're trying to sleep well. They're doing all the things, and they still feel like they're managing anxiety, or they still feel like they can't reach the goals that they have. That then is where we have to look at your brain to really understand, like, okay, you're doing everything on the outside that should be setting you up for success. That is when what you and I talked about, we have to address the hardware, because you can download software to a great computer or to a computer all day long. And if the computer has a hardware issue, it doesn't matter how great the software is. So we're very much like the hardware experts in the room.
Okay. Yeah. I appreciate that so much, but again, I like that you look at the whole, the whole person.
I was going to say too, what's really awesome is when people can get even more defined in the supplements that they're taking or the type of behaviors they're trying to do outside of the clinic, right? Because there's different supplements that some people don't even need to be taking, right? Like their brain, maybe their physiology, their nervous system does not need it. Mm-hmm. I was able to come up with a couple suggestions for you because I saw data in front of me. So it's a data-driven approach instead of just running to Whole Foods and grabbing some supplements that are good for stress relief or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's all about tailoring and individualized protocols.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if I should mention this or not, but we even talked about candles. And, the atmosphere that you have. And I am constantly burning candles. And you said, are they synthetic candles? And yes, probably. So that even affects, what you're breathing in, affects your whole being, apparently, in your brain. So I just learned that today.
There you go. All sorts of knowledge nuggets.
Yes, I know. It's, unbelievable. Okay, so is this something that this treatment, is this something that you are seeing people who have exhausted other forms of treatment? Because this is, in my mind, a little more out of the box. So if you'll talk to people or talk to us about that, like the thought of, doing this kind of therapy.
Yes, I'd say, over the past even 7 years, more and more people are starting to seem to be more educated about health and wellness and nutrition. It's just people are looking for other resources. And so our field has been around since the 80s. I mean, truly, like neurofeedback was discovered in the 40s. So there's been a lot of build up to where we are now. So I think a lot of people think what I do is this cutting edge modality, that it's brand new. It's actually not. Learned behaviors and operant conditioning or classical conditioning have been known for a long time, kind of how the brain learns how to wire itself. Mm-hmm. That being said, this is more of a state-specific thing. I think different states look for alternative ways to address health differently. I've very much so noticed, like being in the South, less people know about functional medicine, less people know about neurofeedback. My company is based in Denver. A lot of people, not a ton, but a lot more people know about brain training or neurofeedback. So it has been kind of interesting moving down here to Tulsa in a totally different market that does health a little bit differently. Mm-hmm.
Do people do this who have exhausted other forms of treatment?
So we get tough cases sometimes where people have done the medication route. They've tried therapy. They've tried a yoga practice. They have seen every doctor under the sun, and they still are struggling with XYZ symptoms. So we absolutely get kind of really tough cases that come to Braincode centers as well. And it's so cool because some of the cases where you would think, I had this one lady that had done everything. She was like hopeless, suicidal. It was a very intense case. And she even said, she's like, if you can fix me, like she was so hopeless at that point. And we got to just literally watch this lady get her life back week after week after week. She ended up getting her kids back into her family environment, her entire like glow showed up differently. And my whole team talked about her on this, like we do team meeting wins and stuff like that. And there was people that were kind of like crying. It was really intense. So yes, we absolutely get people where by the whim of things, they find out about neurofeedback sometimes because they've tried everything. Hopefully, and that's why I'm so thankful I'm on this podcast, is more people can at least start to know that it's an option. Like whether or not you do it off the bat, at least know that you can train your brain, and your brain wants to change. It doesn't want to be stuck. So as long as people know that it's an option, I think that is a huge part of why I'm here and part of the impact that I want to have. But we still have a long way to go. A lot of people have no clue what brain mapping and neurofeedback is.
Well, yeah, hopefully then people are learning a little bit more today. Yeah. So if you could also talk to us about purpose. I can tell you are very passionate about what you do. And so I'm wondering if you feel like you're living your purpose.
You know, I'm grateful to feel like I have been and I am every single day. It's actually been interesting because my value and my purpose and my faith and stuff like that has actually been a little bit challenged being in Tulsa. I have been removed from my team. I've been removed from my family, my friends. And so I've had to really like rediscover like what does impact, because impact is my number one value. What does that look like on a remote basis? I don't get to go into my centers every day. I don't get to go be with my family on a regular basis. And I would be like lying to tell you that that's not incredibly difficult for me. And so again, it's all about pivoting. Like, okay, then my purpose has not changed. My value, my number one value has not changed, but what does it look like in this season that I have in life right now? And so I've just, tried to put myself in different situations because I know that my impact is greatest when I'm like with people, not necessarily just doing remote behind the scenes work. But it's really easy when you don't know anybody in a town to just sit behind your computer and sit there all day long and just look at brain maps and do emails. So things like this, just getting outside of my box. And I'm so grateful that I met you. And yeah, so I'd say that's where my purpose is at right now.
Okay, good. Yeah, I love that. Okay, so just in wrapping up, I know that you offer a complimentary consultation, and I would like for you to kind of talk to people about what that is and what that includes, and then how people can get a hold of you.
Yes, so I love, like I said, educating. Please, 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 like empower yourself with options when it comes to your health. And so we do free consultations, 30, 45 minutes long. You can either go to braincodecenters.com, fill out the contact form. You can DM us on our Instagram, which definitely go follow us. Yeah, that's so funny. And we will absolutely get in contact with you, and you actually get to set up either a phone or a Zoom call. I do actually still do personally some consultation, and then I have some colleagues as well. They're all absolutely fantastic, whoever you get paired up with, but that will be a time to get all of your questions answered. We'll learn about you and see if it's a good option.
Okay, that's perfect. So I just appreciate you talking with me today. This has been a lot of fun. It was so educational in the beginning when I was here before I even started recording, just learning more about myself and my brain. And it's crazy the potential that brains have. And I'm really looking forward to working with you and looking at the brain activity a little bit more and seeing how that will develop over time. And I know I'll have to have you back, and we'll circle back. But right now, I just thought it's important for people to get to know what Braincode Centers is, and you and your heart for what you do and for helping people, and to know that it is an option for people. So, yeah.
Well, Nancy, it's been such a pleasure. I feel honored that we got introduced, and I'm so excited to continue the conversation with you. And I love what you're doing too, impacting people and their business journeys.
Good. Thanks again. Okay, everybody, that's a wrap on this week's episode. I want to thank you for listening to the Sharing Passion and Purpose podcast. It means the world to me, and I'd love to connect with you. Please follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Sharing Passion and Purpose, and Twitter at Passion Sharing. Also, if you like this podcast, it would mean a lot to me for you to subscribe, rate, and review it. And as always, all my show notes will be available on my website, sharingpassionandpurpose.com.